All things considered, it feels much harder to let go of versions of yourself, like fingers loosening on a kite string, than it does to uproot yourself, stand headfirst in the soil, and tell everybody you're new again. The two sides I have read like a cassette. The tape is scratched and sounds like the familiarity of a childhood memory that only just happened but feels really far away. Like waving goodbye to a loved one from a train, life is short, and suddenly I'm so far away. There is all this tape that has come unwound, pulling on and around my desk, and here I am, going shopping for frames to display it in. Thank you. This next poem I wrote when I was a little younger. I've edited it over the years. I was 17 years old when I wrote this. And this was at a time when I realized that a lot of what I talked to people about and a lot of conversations I had with people didn't feel fulfilling, so to speak. And so this poem's called On Small Talk. To the people who ask me what I do, look me in the eye and tell me that this life is not worth something. That my melancholy, my inspiration for every form of expression needs labels. Staple me to a plank and let me drift out to sea, and I will write poetry till my arms mimic the evening sun, and the sea blows my brains out the back of my head, salt in every crevice. Like that year when my grandfather died, and my family flooded my ancestral home from the inside with their tears. And have I told you about the time when hollow metal took my breath away? Or when I realized that I am really we, and we are really us, shuffling through life with twilight hanging over our heads, our words small, sentences so short, we waste our breath on small talk. We, creatures of the dawn, sons of serendipity, ghosts of our drunken mumbles, we who lose roughly 300,000 cells every second and kiss one another on impulse, we have the audacity to ask each other what we do. Ask me what I do and I will tell you, I create and I destroy. And I lament a little too often. See, the thing about paper hearts is that the blood they pump is what makes them heavier. Their beats tear away bits of them. I am Holy Trinity, locked inside of this mouth that cannot open wide enough for an escape. I have not been painted well enough. So when you ask me what I do, I ask you what color is your favorite? What are you thinking? What makes your heart beat faster? What are you running from? When I was in 7th grade, I came second in a race where I lost my shoe halfway through, but I kept on running. I like to think that we're all born with perseverance clenched tight in our fists. I often spend days dreaming up the perfect revolution. What do you do? I spend weekends in bed hoping to get miraculously brilliant at the guitar, and when I'm upset, I cut myself down to size. Sleep until it feels like I've disappeared. What do you do? Where do you want to go? Why are you still breathing? This moment here, will you remember this? Will you remember me? Look me in the eye and tell me that this life is not worth something, and I will fall out of my body just to show you the effort it takes to blink. Look me in the eye. We are magic. A funhouse full of mirrors, dancing, making faces. We are the ink on our papers. Look me in the eye. With the universe alive in redundant traces of spilled ketchup on some kitchen floor. Time immemorial stumbling into yet another day. So look me in the eye and ask me what I do. And I'll tell you I breathe stories. What do you do? Thank you. This last poem I wrote at a time when I realized that my mental health was less than stellar. And I deal with a lot of things in my life by writing about them, and this was one of them. This is where it got real. I think when you call something by its name, it finally becomes real for you, and you can finally go ahead and deal with it. And this is me calling things out by their name. So this poem's called Pink Sunsets. 1. Facile, troglodyte, sporadic, infinite. Look at all the words I know. In the middle of a half-empty space on the back of a dying star, I'm painting photographs with them. Tell me, what do you like to do with your midnights? 2. Sometimes, I like to imagine that my room, having taught itself to flout the rules of physics, has broken off from the rest of my apartment and floated out into outer space. Although this isn't the best feeling to wake up to, it's either this or the realization that the nights are much longer now, that my brain is perceiving everything in slow motion as a result of pickling too long in its own shadow, which is to say that I prefer outer space to the vastness of my insides. Look at all the patience I know. 3. The moon hasn't smiled at us in 1,000 years. We now blame each other for all this driftwood washing up to the shore and romanticize its waxing face on park benches and in crumbling ruins. I wonder sometimes if anybody's looked up and asked it for forgiveness for our apathy yet. I would, if it weren't for my fierce belief that the moon is made of cheese, which is to say that that is not where you will find your surrender or your solace. Perhaps if we learned to undress with the lights on, we'd find amazement and faith in knocked knees and drying ribs instead of locking ourselves in our institutions. Look at all the courage we know. 4. Although I'm unsure of what first started it, I see now that everyone knows the art of creating isolation chambers out of skyscrapers. Our mouths are wells that have run dry, at the bottom of which clink all the coins that have been desperately thrown as wishes for the very words that they block. 5. The next time you're crossing the road, if you look close, if you really concentrate, you'll realize that we're shaping our cities to look like guns. Click, bang, recoil effect. We've chosen to let our trails limp. This estrangement that has set itself upon us is surprisingly light, but the temptation to play pretend with its weight is bogged down by necessity. 6. The researchers have been telling me that a psychosis is to descend upon us all, like a pink sunset. I find myself praying that that mass hallucination is no longer in monochrome or smoke. I'm so certain that the clouds are tired of filtering our abuse and cleaning up the concrete. Look at all the bliss we know. 7. I know a girl who spent all her money on a poster that reminded her that to be wasteful is a sin. But if life is as short as the fortune cookies tell us, why not spend bits of myself on this carousel that refuses to stop 8? I've been ringing doorbells to ask people for conversations all my life. My best friend at 8 thought it was the strangest game of ding-dong ditch she'd ever played. The truth has always been that I'm terrified of my skin turning into rivers, and my organs becoming less than capable of keeping alive anything less than the entire solar system. And although I know I must, we must, nothing terrifies me more than the possibility of turning to my grave in the midst of granite, glass, suits, and screens. Look at all the tension we know. And tell me that you feel this alienation too. Tell me that my apartment isn't the only one that feels devoid of spirit, even as the cars on the highway cheat distance and death. Tell me that this isn't an emergency that I've brought upon myself, but one that's gradually enveloping all of us. Tell me that we have a way out, that we've been digging underground routes to perfumed peace. 9. Sanguine, dither, barren, falter. Look at all the words I know. I'm writing love letters to the loneliness of this city on your door, ringing your doorbell in the middle of a fading day. Tell me, what do you like to do with your midnights? Thank you.